Welcome to Design is Marketing, the podcast for product teams and marketers who want to learn what works and what doesn't when it comes to engaging and converting users. This podcast is brought to you by Sparker, the design agency. If you want to know more about it, check sparker.co. Hello, everyone. My guest today is Elena Montoya. Elena knows everything about content marketing and content creation, having worked for industry leaders such as SEMRush. Today, we'll talk about storytelling and feature launch with her. A big round of applause. Welcome, Elena.
Thank you very much, Federico. Thanks for having me, and thank you for such a nice introduction.
Yeah, thanks a lot. I'm very happy to have you here today. And well, if you haven't done it yet, take some pad and pencil so that you can take some note. Elena, would you like to tell us a little bit more about yourself?
Yeah, I've been in content marketing for over 5 years now. That part of the experience dedicated to B2B software marketing. Before that, I had some experience in B2C, and here I am today for quite a few years now, marketing Pushwoosh, an omni-channel customer engagement platform, and bringing our values with the help of the content.
Cool. And before we jump in, would you like to tell us quickly what is Pushwoosh?
Yeah, Pushwoosh is that omni-channel customer engagement platform that allows marketers, product teams, so anyone with no specific tech skills to get their audience to engage, get retained in the app or on their website, and finally to convert to the target action. So we have
Okay, so
all the tools
basically,
for that. Yeah.
yeah, it's an easy way to kind of sort out the tech part behind omnichannel engagement so that you guys take care of that, even if there is
Yeah.
no, say, huge tech capacity on the other side. Yeah,
Yeah,
sounds cool.
this is the
Sounds very
case.
interesting. And so you said before that, right, you were working with SEMrush, right? So
Yeah.
you know everything about B2B content marketing.
Well, that's quite
That's quite a statement.
immodest to say. Yeah, that's quite immodest to say that I know everything because, well, it's a sphere that's constantly evolving. But yeah, especially with that experience, I learned a thing or two on content marketing, and I'm specifically grateful to my colleagues. It was an amazing team, and the work standards I still stick to. That's what I learned there.
Yeah, that's good. And today we'll talk a lot about that. So, how important is content marketing into what you do now?
Well, content marketing is something that's not going to disappear anywhere. Like there are always some trends in marketing that come and go. There are moments in the life of an organization where you can afford influencer marketing, for example, or not. Or sometimes you do more of the funnel activities. Sometimes you do loud presentation on conferences, all those things. But content marketing is something that serves you in all the stages of the organization's life cycle, and so yeah, it's omnipresent.
Yeah, would you say content marketing is perhaps even more important in B2B than in B2C?
um I'd say so. It's something really that you can't, well, you almost can't imagine a company that could go without content in B2B, especially since especially now we are not talking about the funnel being very linear. It's not like on the chart that you can search in Google, like you have tofu, you have the acquisition stage, then all the valuable customers get to the bottom of that funnel. No, it's something more of a spiral. So you always want to get back to those audience, even once you've acquired them as a free user, for example, or even if they started paying for a junior subscription plan, you still want them to receive some value, and you want to get back to them with content.
Yeah, that's true. And also, that is also what makes it perhaps sometimes a bit hard to exactly track and measure, right? What was the part of the engagement which was
Yeah,
relevant for the ultimate conversion, right? So,
yeah.
because there is always some kind of ongoing debate between, like long-term engagement and, for example, things like content marketing, and on the other side, more like quick wins. I'm thinking
Mhm.
more like paid ads and stuff. So, how would you say that the two should be combined?
Well, I guess it should be a combination of both, ideally. I know that many companies struggle with prioritizing things, and I
Hmm.
know that as the competition is fierce, and many tech companies nowadays don't have that much stuff to execute all the wonderful ideas that they can generate. Well, it's always the case. No matter how many employees you have, you'll never get to execute all the ideas that the team has generated. But I do believe that as a strategist, you want to find that perfect mix that works for your brand, where there will be place and time for quick wins, and where you can track directly the influence that the content has brought, and something more long term.
Yeah.
Proportions may differ, as what I normally recommend is focusing on bottom and middle of the funnel, because there is one thing I discovered about middle of the funnel is that actually it's the most repurposable content. Because
Okay.
imagine,
Give me an
yeah,
example. I am very curious about
yeah,
it.
imagine you're describing a use case of your B2B software, and you're going to primarily use it at the middle of the funnel stage, where there is this decision maker trying to figure out if the software is particularly good for their use case, is it the best solution among others, what kind of values we're going to receive if we opt for this particular software. But what happens next is that, okay, we imagine the decision was made in the favor of your software. And then we have another person entering the stage. This is the actual user of your platform. So this could be something somewhat different from that decision maker who's already consumed that part of content. And here you want to start the onboarding, and maybe you want to send the very same blog post on a use case to this new persona who has entered as an actual user, and they are looking for ways to obtain the most value to get the highest ROI from the platform that has already been purchased.
Okay, so what you're saying is that basically content which is more like middle of the funnel also
Yeah,
has the chance to be adapt, a little bit for like top of the funnel, new users, because it's also like it is probably the kind of content that you can stretch the most, right?
yeah,
That's what I'm hearing from
yeah.
you. Okay.
That's the thing.
Yeah.
And let's not forget about the fact that content is that the effort you put in content is not even the result that you see on a blog page. It's not the time that was spent on this creation is not only for writing the piece. This is also for researching. So the
Ah,
writer,
definitely. Yeah.
yeah, so the writer who researched the topic, apart from writing this mofu piece, they always have some side notes. They do have some drafts, and most importantly, they do have something left in
Yeah.
their mind. So it
Yeah.
will be
Not to
very easy for
consider.
them.
Yeah, the time that goes into right optimizing images, for example, the right
Hmm.
technical things like alt description and stuff.
Yeah, let's not
I
forget
do,
about
yeah,
that.
yeah, I do a lot of blogging myself, and
Hmm.
it's indeed very time consuming. I think probably content creation, I would say, is a third of the time. But the
Uh-huh.
rest goes really into research, optimization, also
Yeah.
like comparing the results of previous work. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, which is one of the reasons why it's perhaps sometimes discouraging, right at the beginning. Like just to share with you some experience that I had with my previous startup. Sometimes when you're working towards very short-term goals, like I don't know, fundraising in 6 months or 9 months,
Hmm.
you kind of question if content creation, especially well now it seems to be a very saturated market, right? But especially blogging, for example, which tends to be a very long-term activity in terms of reward. Sometimes you tend to question it. So yeah, curious if you have some experience there. What kind of advice would you give to especially early stage companies?
At the early stage. So what should they focus on?
Yeah,
Mm,
is it the right
yeah.
activity to focus on?
I do believe that the earlier you start getting into that domain, and the earlier you at least have a first advice from a content strategist that can figure out the further road for you. I'm not saying about hiring five content writers straight away. I'm not saying hiring a full-time sales specialist even. I'm talking about at least a few consultations with a content strategist, someone who will tell you that, okay, the most intuitive thing to focus on may be bottom of the funnel, but are you sure that what your research shows you indicates that you indeed should focus on the bottom of the funnel, or is in your case top of the funnel activity in terms of content marketing will provide better value? I'm talking about the competition, about the topics,
Yeah.
because it always depends on
Okay.
who are
And
you working against.
let's say that you are the specialist now. So in which
Yeah.
case would you recommend to me to focus more on bottom of the funnel, and in which case would you recommend me to focus more on top of the funnel?
Well, mm,
So we can steal your
yeah.
knowledge.
Haha. Well, mostly what I recommend is putting more effort into creating bottom of the funnel, because, well, naturally this is something
Hmm.
that requires more effort from any content marketer and content writer, and maybe start from the proportion of 70% on bottom, maybe middle of the funnel, and 30% on some top of the funnel content, but chosen really strategically. So think about getting the most of the time that you've spent on a piece. So we've agreed on you spending only 30% of your work time on top of the funnel pieces. But what kind of piece is it going to be? Is it going to be the one very tied to your product, presenting a specific use case, or maybe presenting a unique value that the platform brings? Or maybe it's the format that's going to beat all the other competition in the TOEFL. Does it make
Got it.
sense?
Yeah, definitely. So yeah, it's not just about the stage, right? But it's also about
Yeah.
choosing the right kind of content, right, for
Mhm.
conversion. So you would say that as a general rule of thumb, let's say it's good to focus for 70% on activities that are bottom of the funnel or mid of the funnel, and then only 30% in like kind of creating new users and top of the funnel audience around the things that you're creating. Am I correct?
Yeah, that's correct. But yeah, the point here is that you want those 30%, like, well, maybe they will
Yeah,
bring 70% of the result or whatever the proportion is. So yeah, you
got
want
it.
to be still very strategic about them.
What I'm hearing actually seems like, so before getting in touch with new people, before like expanding the reach of your audience, make sure that what you have is really converting, that you have all the
Yeah.
right things in place so that if someone has their first touch point with your brand, then they immediately know, say, how to continue from there. Am I correct?
Yeah, yeah, that's true. Because, well, with top of the funnel content, especially if you're only a beginner in this sphere for this specific company, it's very easy to get very fascinated by all those broad topics.
Got it.
But but the challenge with them is to make them about your brand. So, and another thing that I do advocate for in content marketing is doing experiments. So, and with bottom of the funnel content, you can try a few experiments. There are still lots of formats to create for the bottom of the funnel, and I do recommend that you make a few experiments to figure out what converts better. And then once you figure that out, you can expand your reach and
Yeah.
have better conversions, have more conversions
Got
at
it.
the end.
Would you like to give me an example of an experiment that we can run? So let's say, for
Mhm.
example, well, someone that does blogging, right? And then they have traffic on their website. And then they also have,
Mhm.
let's say, an Instagram and LinkedIn channel. So there's traffic to the website. From there, they try to collect leads with a newsletter. And then on their newsletter, they kind of inform them on, latest activities, feature launch, and stuff like that. Um, what kind of experiment would you recommend?
Uh-huh. Is blogging the primary business here?
No. Well, let's say that we are in the B2B sphere product, a bit what you
Hmm.
guys are doing, right? So yeah, blogging is not the primary thing there. The primary thing is more
Uh-huh.
like to create an audience around the product that you have.
Uh-huh. Okay. So, yeah, I see. Well, it's a nice thing in the example you're describing that you already put social media in the equation. What you can try is getting a bit smart, I'd say. So you could create, for example, a type of the post like best tools, the classical example of something more middle of the funnel, going to the bottom of the funnel oriented. And there, maybe you don't name the exact category, your exact competition. So let's say your company is in the marketing software space and you're doing marketing analytics software. You could create, of course, best tools for marketing analytics. But the problem here is that you would have to name your direct competitors, because how
Yeah,
come you're creating a quality piece and you're not naming someone already famous in this sphere? What you could do instead is create maybe mm, best tools for e-commerce marketers, for example. So take a bit overlapping sphere. So you're not talking exclusively about marketing analytics tools. You could talk about um, tools for improving customer experience, for website optimization, for competitor research, whatever can be useful for e-commerce marketers. And there you could include your potential partners, so other companies working in the sphere, and you would tag them, you would get in touch with them, you would create sort of a content partnership around that activity. Maybe they would co-promote these posts on their social media, and this would be a win-win on many fronts. So this is how you could still get focused on those valuable potential leads who are searching for software, for solutions to their exact problems. You could, at the same time, you would avoid that problem of getting into direct competition with your direct rivals, and you would get it into partnership. And the fourth
got it.
value is that you could expand your reach.
Yeah, so
Why not?
that's actually, it sounds like a smarter way of, like doing the typical blog post, like the 20 best SaaS solution for this or this or that. So,
Hmm.
for example, if I have to relate it to what I do with Sparker, my digital agency, then it would be something more like, instead of like other UX, UI, or web agencies, I would list more like marketing
Yeah.
agencies, copy agencies. So all agencies that can help you, let's say all agencies that can help scale up business and stuff, but then without mentioning my direct competitors, which means that we can also then, if we want, help each other distribute that article, because then it's a win-win for everyone who's involved. Yeah,
Yeah,
that's
and that's
yeah, that's very
another
interesting.
starting point. Yeah.
Yeah,
Like
yeah,
the
that's
saying
very good.
goes, this could be the beginning of a beautiful friendship.
Yeah, yeah, I think it's very interesting because, yeah, indeed, often there is also this thing of like trying to protect what's yours, right, and not try to engage with other potential players. But this kind of solution actually makes it very interesting for everyone who's involved to be a part of that.
Yeah.
Wow, very interesting. And so I was curious to know, like, because we mentioned before also the role of copy, say, not only for, say, the acquisition part, but also once you launch your own product, right? So we mentioned before, like, feature launch, the storytelling that happens within the product. So for users that have already shown some kind of interest and they're either trying to activate themselves or, for example, are
Yeah.
returning users, would you like to tell me a little bit more about that?
Well, my lucky position in Pushpush is that I get to oversee all sorts of content, starting with marketing content and ending with that product UI copy. And that allows me to see that the best results are obtained when there is a real connection, there is a real synergy between those pieces. So, for example, once again, returning to that piece of use case, middle of the funnel content that we've created,
Yeah.
a use case for your software. What's happening next? How are you going to recycle, repurpose it further? For example, if it dedicated to a new feature generally in your product, or will it be new for a particular user, you could use that heavy product integration part from the blog post as a short tutorial or as a short intro to that
Oh, that's
feature.
very interesting. Yeah.
Yeah, and you could use
So
it
that you
as a
have it both for
tooltip, as
new
a pop-up.
users. Yeah.
Yeah, you would want to introduce that. And what's also very important here is, well, as usual, cohesiveness of your messages along the channels, across the channels. Because if you're creating a bunch of use cases the on how that show that your software is easy to use, for example, it's a real value. Actually, it's not like a soft skill that should go secondary for software. It's quite a deal breaker for many clients. And if this is what you're currently promoting in your long form content, maybe you want to illustrate that in tooltips on in your user interface as well.
Yeah.
Well, we assume that user interface is indeed as easy to use as you're
Yeah.
describing, but also you maybe want to create those step-by-step tutorials, and you can think of that as a content marketer even while you're creating those longer form content.
Nice. So let me just summarize what you just said, right? Because what you're saying is that if I have, say, research and then strategized and then created content around, for example, a new feature that I'm launching, actually the majority of that content can be used both, let's say, to inform potentially new users
Mm-hmm.
who might be, say, attracted by the fact that we have this new feature, but at the same time also to inform existing users on how to use that feature, so that the content would
Yes.
be probably like, let's say, 80% the same. But
Yeah.
then you can repurpose a lot of that. Wow, that sounds very interesting. Do you have an example of a case in which you've done that?
Well, actually, we're doing that all the time. Recently, we've launched a new flow for sending emails in push, and we had to announce it because it's a great work that has been done, and this is something that many users have been expecting, and it would be a shame that those who expected it the most wouldn't even know about it. So what we're making a whole bunch of content, starting with pop-ups in the product for those that are already in the product. So this is where
Yeah.
our funnel or spiral of communication begins, and then we're going on with emails, basically telling the same thing, like, hey, have a look, this is something that's going to make your life easier and make your job done faster. And then we're going to broaden our reach with a video for YouTube, and then with a blog post. And yeah, this is actually a good
Sounds good.
way to organize the workflow of a content marketing team, because it's like a quick win for them
Hmm.
to create. You just create a short pop-up, you just write a few notes about that, and then when well sometime some when you have some more time, you expand it to a bigger blog post. You then go to your video production team and you make it something bigger in a more visual format, and this is how it goes. And this is
Okay. Yeah,
something that, yeah.
that's very interesting. What I like about it is that you also gave us a bit of a, say, step by step approach that we can follow for the next time that we have a new feature launch. So I heard here, say, tooltip within the app. I've heard newsletter. I've heard video. That actually triggered me to think like, this could also be a very good way to re-engage users that might have potentially have lost a bit of interest in the product, right? Does it also help for you in that sense?
Well, we'll see if it will be helpful for engagement in
Okay.
that particular case. But yeah, this is something that happens, and businesses change all the time, and the situations in companies change. So if a customer has churned today, they might come a year later. They might come back with another need or the same need, probably, that the competitor didn't get to resolve as well as you do. But
What
you
would you say?
still.
What would you say are the main reasons why customers that churned would come back? Is it more about
Mhm.
new things that you added? Is it pricing? Is it the fact that competitors were not able to live up to their promise? What would you think is the main reason?
I would say competitors did not um, did not provide the same standard that they expected, because the
Okay.
grass is always greener at somebody else's place. But then from what I can see from real customers experience is that what seemed to be easy in paper didn't turn out to be that easy in day-to-day usage. And it sometimes really feels like, oh, customer, like when somebody praises customer success and a company promotes it as a benefit of choosing their software, it's something secondary, although in the reality it's not. Because yeah, indeed, maybe for a primary decision maker, the reason to choose one software over the other won't be necessarily customer support in the first place, but for
Yeah.
the team that's actually going to use it, it's going to be a deal breaker. And if a year later it turns out that too much resources are wasted on struggles with the software, they might come back to their ex.
Yeah. Well, what you just said about the grass is greener on the other side sounds a bit like the story of me try to find and use a different productivity tool every 9 to 12 months on average and then never being
Huh.
satisfied with it and then going back to the new to the same ones or try new ones again. So yeah, I fully recognize that. Fully recognize that. Well, Elena, I think it has been a very interesting chat so far. There is one more thing that I would like to ask you, and what is the best book that you have read on marketing, and why?
I can advise on many things, but I won't advise you on a book on marketing, because what I believe is that to learn marketing, you'd better learn it from practice or from a
You have to
person.
do it.
So
Okay,
instead of a book, maybe you would find yourself a mentor or an expert that you would love to follow, somebody who could provoke some ideas in your mind and somebody who would inspire you to put them to practice.
and then just do it. So there's nothing that has been like transformational for you.
No, I don't think
No.
so.
Okay. Okay.
Indeed, it wasn't a book. It was always rather colleagues or some marketing influencers who I've been listening
Okay, yeah,
to.
that's very interesting. So I guess there is also, say, the very practical approach behind that.
Yeah,
Because
yeah,
indeed it's true, a lot of people are telling you, that you should talk to users, that you should do like the typical things that you hear. So I would say sometimes strategy is much easier than execution, because then it's really
huh.
in the nitty gritty of exactly how do you do that, that
Mhm.
you see that actions make a lot of difference. Yeah, I
Yeah.
think it's a very good piece of advice. Well, thanks a lot, Elena. It has been a great chat with you. So, how can users or listeners of the podcast find you?
So they can search for Elena Montoya at LinkedIn, or they can search for Elena Montoya plus Pushwoosh and read some exact pieces that I've been still writing for Pushwoosh.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, that's good. So, you're in charge of their blog as well.
Yeah, yeah. I do lead a team, but I can't get myself away from writing at all because this is something I
Okay.
deeply love.
Yeah, got it. Well, so for everyone who's interested, go and check what Elena writes on the blog of Pushwish. Elena, I want to thank you one more time and thank you
Thanks
for
for
listening.
having me. It's been a pleasure.
Yeah.